Ever since the release of video games, they have been demonized by parents, teachers, and even some scientists alike. The news, as well as other media, has turned video games into a scapegoat whenever a crime is committed, especially when a murder occurs. Because of this, parents and other civilians are led to believe that video games cause children to commit these violent acts, and they will not allow children to play these games. However, this is simply not the case, or with any media, as a matter of fact. In fact, there are some video games that even help kids improve their learning, as well as some other skills. So, in short, video games have never caused a child to really commit a violent crime, such as a school shooting, and in some ways are even beneficial to their learning skills. Contrary to what the news has claimed, recent studies have shown that the overall crime rate has gone down, while video game sales have actually gone up. To start with, a report from the U.S. Secret Service back in 2002 reported that while the consumption of violent media went up, the crime rates went down during that time period. During another study by an expert named Henry Jenkins, he cited statistics that proved that the crime rate of juveniles was at an all-time low since the last 30 years. About 30 to 40 years ago, that was when video games started to take place, starting with video games like Space War, Pong, Pac-Man. You get the idea. But in addition to video games, there have been other forms of media that has been blamed for violence, such as movies, TV, comic books, anything new. Studies studies related to these video games include TV, of course. For instance, a study written in Washington, D.C. found that while violence in TV declined by 19% between 1999 and 2001, the violence in video games was actually increasing. Ironically, people started playing video games more at around that time as well. Another study, which was taken in October of 2014, cited an expert named Patrick Markey, who compared the violence on screen to the violence in reality in movies and TV between 1960 and 2012, where he reported that the movie violence overall has increased in the past 50 years, and movies that were rated PG-13 specifically tripled in the last 27 years. He also showed that while movie violence has gone up in recent years, at the same time, crime has gone down. And Patrick showed that the violence in movies and other media did not directly affect today's youth in violence. There were other experts as well, such as Christopher J. Ferguson, who conducted their own studies and findings in support of the entertainment in media. Christopher Ferguson created a study to look at movie violence and homicide rates from 1920 to 2005, and ended up finding no correlation between the two variables. And while he did find that they temporarily had a correlation in the middle of the 20th century, the correlation quickly reversed after 1990. But during his study on movie and TV violence, Ferguson showed that there was no correlation between the violence in media and the violence in real life. There have also been studies from official organizations that still find no link to violence in entertainment, such as the FBI. In a report from said FBI in 2014, while movie violence has increased each year, crime has fallen to up to 50% over the last 20 years. So, despite the fact that violence in films has actually been going up, the FBI reported that crime rate was also falling at that same time.
He is holding you back.
So, even in other forms of media, not just video games, It shows that violence has been going up over the last few years, but somehow the crime rates keep going down. So, in addition to all this evidence, there's even more studies that prove the old video game violence myth wrong. To start with, Christopher Ferguson again reported that even while video game sales skyrocketed, youth violence was down to its lowest in 40 years. So, in addition to that one report, Ferguson made another study that went from 1996 to 2011, where he studied the violence in video games and violence between youths, while finding that video games had a correlation with the decline of real-life violence, instead of the other way around. Whew. And to back up Ferguson, a recent study that was taken from 1995 to 2008, okay, not recent, but it reported that the sales went up and the arrest rate for murder went down by 71.9%, while the overall arrest rate for crimes overall went down by about 49.3%.
Good death gives you strength.
So,
embrace it.
Even though that there have been occasional increases of crime, overall, over the past few years, there's been a drop in criminal activity from ages 18 to 24, and then from 2009 to 2013, the charges for crimes in that same age group dropped between 23 and 31%, while charges for murder overall went down 29%. Aside from the youth, the crime rates between adults were also able to go down recently, although those are some studies that did not match statistics. But overall, the reports showed that as video games have become more popular, the rate of violence between children and adults, for that matter, has declined significantly, which suggests that video games keep kids from committing crimes. Even adding more to these studies, there have been more reports that the violent crime rate has gone down over the past few years. And it's been seen prior to 2015, the overall crime rate per 100,000 people has gone down, and has hit an all-time low that has never been seen since 1969, which is around the time that the very first video games came out. No, I'm just saying. Another study was also taken that showed that as video gameplay increased nearly 8 times since 1996, the overall violence rate for children ages 12 to 17 fell from 35 per 1,000 people all the way to 6 per 1,000 people. So, going from 35 to 6, that's a pretty big statistic. So, probably saying that video games don't cause people to commit crimes. During another study in 2010, it was found that only 5% of video games that were made that year were rated M for mature, such as Call of Duty Modern Warfare, meaning that, which of course means that anyone under the age of 17 cannot buy them. But in a poll, it was revealed that over half the games that were top 10 bestsellers were rated M. So, one would think that if people love playing video games a lot more, then they would probably end up committing crimes based on the violence in media suggestion. Except that they don't. Although studies like this prove that video games do not actually make someone go on a violent rampage, there are still some incidents that lead people to blame video games on crimes they commit later. For instance, the most famous one is the Columbine school shooting, where 2 kids went to their local school and shot and killed about 13 people, injuring many more. And when it was over, the police investigated their house, and they found out that their favorite video game was the first-person shooter named Doom. And then they even found a video recording of the two shooters before they committed the act, where one of them even said that it's gonna be just like playing Doom. So that was one of the incidents. In another, in 2003, in I believe it was Tennessee, two kids named Will Buckner and his stepbrother named Josh were firing 22 caliber rifles at oncoming cars. And when they were arrested, they told the police that they were playing Grand Theft Auto 3 prior and thought that it would be cool to do that in real life. So, what people think is that because incidents like these happen, violent video games such as Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty cause people to act out. And then in a third incident, a kid of the age of 6, a little 6-year-old, had to drive himself to school in Virginia of 2009 because his mother was in bed and he didn't want to wake her, so he took the keys and tried driving to his school, but he ended up crashing. And when he was interrogated by the police, he told them that the video game Grand Theft Auto taught him how to drive. And then, aside from simple incidents such as this, there have been controversies in games itself, such as the infamous No Russian mission, where the player is acting as a terrorist who shoots up an airport during Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, as well as another obscure game called Ethnic Cleansing, where the player is tasked to play as either a skinhead or a Ku Klux Klansman while murdering blacks, Hispanics, and Jews, no one else, making the game extremely racist. And because of these games, people assume that video games in general decide to make children violent and want to go on killing sprees. Except the thing that people overlook is that during Columbine, it was pretty obvious that the kids had mental problems. They joined a gang in school called the Black Trenchcoat Gang. Actually, no, Black Trenchcoat Mafia. And they always kept to themselves. They were basically alone. And it was also said that they had an unhealthy obsession with Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. As for the case with Will Buckner and his stepbrother Josh, it was said that they both had mental issues long before playing the video game Grand Theft Auto. And as for the little kid who drove himself to school when he was 6, my personal question is, who lets their kid play video games such as Grand Theft Auto in the first place? I mean, I've played the game before, but that was when I was a teenager, where I could differentiate reality to fiction. Now, as for the games themselves, such as Grand Theft Auto and Ethnic Cleansing, people thought that you were the hero during the No Russian mission of Call of Duty, and that you were forced to kill innocent civilians during the mission. Except you weren't. First of all, in that mission, you are not the hero. Make no mistake. You have to play as a terrorist who is helping a Russian terrorist commit genocide. That is not the acts of the hero. Secondly, you actually were never forced to kill anyone during the mission. From personal experience of playing the game, you can literally go through the entire level without firing a single bullet, and you will still complete the mission. Thirdly, you have the option to skip the mission at the very beginning of the game. It gives out a loading screen that says that some content might be offensive and asks if you would like to skip that offensive content. So if you pick yes, you will not be penalized, making the level not part of an achievement at all. As for the game ethnic cleansing, I did a little Google search recently, and I found out that the reason why this game is so obscure and rare is because it's not like what I'd say is a mainstream game, like Grand Theft Auto. It was created by a company called Resistance Records, who is famously known for being a neo-Nazi organization.
That's the wrong way.
So, in other words, while yes, the game is pretty shocking with its racism, it should not come to a surprise that it is racist if it's put out by neo-Nazis. And that does not mean that all the games, that every single game is racist and violent. In addition to these debunking the myth of video game violence, despite what some people may think, video games are not the first form of entertainment that have been blamed for something like a mass shooting or a massacre. And it probably won't ever be the last if we're gonna have many new forms of entertainment over the years. So, throughout history, many forms of entertainment has been slandered and criticized and claimed that it has caused anything from a small murder up to a war. To start with a short history of the entertainment platform that has caused people to claim that crimes have been committed in their name includes some early Greek plays back during the time of Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato, where Aristotle enjoyed those Greek plays, but Plato did not. The Bible was then translated into languages that were not Latin, which apparently was able to piss off some people. Novels then and now are sometimes criticized for maybe having some violent or sexual content. Jazz music has been in controversy for not exactly a reason, but it's been there. Rock and roll has been claimed to be the devil's music by some overly Christian people. The Harry Potter series has also come under fire. And the role-playing games such as Dungeons and Dragons have also been claimed to be satanic. Usually television, then, and of course now, especially with that recent controversy over The Walking Dead Season 7 premiere, and now video games. So, the media has always caused a panic over these new forms of entertainment every time they've come onto the scene. So, the fact that video games are now blamed is actually no surprise, especially if anyone remembers Jack Thompson. So, in short, video games being blamed is not really new, but it's starting to get annoying, especially gaming as like at the core sense of the word, like more than video games, like so much as board games such as chess or checkers. That's been around for a long time. Like recently, well, not recently, but some time ago, Archaeologists found King Tut's tomb, and when they looked inside, they found this little game board that they think was a primitive version of chess. But that just goes to show how much people have been playing games over the years.
Enemy spy plane above.
Even in around 2003, when the issue of video game violence has come up to the courts, all the way to the Supreme Court, then the late Justice Antonin Scalia defended video games at that point, saying, pointing out that the Grimm's fairy tales such as Hansel and Gretel are pretty graphic and violent, such as when Hansel and Gretel push the witch into an oven. So he pointed out that those are violent, and since he should ban violent video games, he asks everyone else, should we ban fairy tales like that, which kids have definitely read by now, because those are violent. So, to conclude, video games have been a form of entertainment and expression, and to censor any part of the entertainment that is violent or offensive to a person, like if they decide to censor video games just because they're offensive, then they should probably look over every other form of entertainment. Adding to the fact that video games are blamed for school shootings and massacres, video games have also been claimed to lead to aggression in general, as in like not needing to be a violent crime, just being aggressive anyway. Most studies, whether they are true or false, have come from colleges that study this about gaming, such as Dartmouth College from New Hampshire, where a researcher named Jay Hall found that through studies in video games, they can result in aggressiveness and also desensitize the person playing them. The researchers at college, they have shown that there may have been a connection to an individual's aggression. There have been multiple studies about this, but one of the main ones was from the American Psychological Association, which brought 106 male players and 104 female players play the violent video game Wolfenstein 3D, or the non-violent video game called Myst, which they played for 15 minutes, and then were shown violent words on the screen, and they were timed on how fast they could repeat those words. And while the gamers who played the violent video game Wolfenstein repeated the words much faster, the students who played the non-violent video game were slowed to repeat the words such as kill, murder, maim, words like those. So, because of this study, some people have believed that there is a possible link between aggression and violent video games. During another study that was conducted in Minnesota of the United States, there was a showing of likelihood and aggression that focused on 364 children ages 9 to 12, while Japan also had a study that was similar to that, but used 1,200 children who were ages 12 to 18, and the studies had similar results. Because of these two similar studies, it's safe for some people to assume that there is a real connection between video game violence and aggression. Except, although there are many studies that claim to find a link between these, there are other factors that can contribute to aggression. Recent studies have also been made to refute the arguments made of video game aggression, and those studies have also worked. For instance, during December of 2014, researchers from the University of Queensland, Australia, had students play 15 minutes of different video games, and then they performed 2 pro-social behavior experiments. That one of them included donating money to a charity, and then it was shown that people who played violent video games actually donated more money, which debunked that myth of aggressiveness. Another recent study of pro-social behavior proved that the violence in video games actually does not correlate with aggression, since the kids were once again more generous. There have been other studies that have refuted the aggressiveness claim, including one taken by 3,000 players at the Rochester University of New York, and it was found that it was the challenge, not the violence, that drew players into the game. So, in short, it is the challenge and thrill of playing video games, not the violent content in them that draws people to play it. In another study, the National Institute of Media and Family, aka NIMF, also reported that in their own study of violent video games, they decided that they shouldn't mention the measure of amount of aggression they found in gamers, and ignored the fact that real-life violence had been in a decline as video game sales went up. And they also ignored a report from 2000 that set up 4 tests on aggression, but only one of those tests made it into the report because the other 3 did not fit their narrative, proving that some scientists do not rely on their own studies when it comes to their own claim. This causes some researchers, such as NIMF, to lose their credibility, and it's proven that games do not really lead to aggression. In another report, back in 2002, the United States Secret Service revealed that they had found very little evidence that shooters and criminals enjoyed playing the violent media, even more than gamers, which kind of debunks that violent gamers enjoy violent games more. So, since the Secret Service is also a part of the Department of Homeland Security, which is also part of the federal government, it's kind of safe to trust the Secret Service when they say things like video games do not cause violent behavior. So, even when there are many studies that claim to video games and aggression, there's usually a counter study, and it's always good to check the original study in the first place. Contrary to what most people think, video games are actually beneficial to some people, including improving some physical skills. Not kidding. Not talking about weight loss, but I am talking about things like accuracy with projectiles, such as shooting. Now, some say that's a bad thing, but that could also be a good thing, as long as someone knows how to fire a weapon and is not going on school shooting. But in a study from the University of Rochester, again from New York, researchers found that video games can improve one's awareness when driving a car. So that incident mentioned earlier about the 6-year-old driving a car to school, that is both good and bad. The bad because it was an underage driver, but it was also a little bit good because if what he said that Grand Theft Auto taught him to drive, then that means that some kids might already learn to drive if they play video games. But if they play games that are more beneficial, such as Forza. So the study shows that while playing video games, a person can increase their observation skills, and they should, especially if they need to be careful on the road, because their eyes need to be everywhere, especially looking in the mirrors. In another study from 2011 from the Archives of Surgery, it was also found that gaming can improve hand-eye coordination. This is not really new because it's been proven, but the study has stated that there was actually a pretty good statistic in hand-eye coordination, such as tying into hand-eye coordination. A study that involved medical incisions found that gamers who played for over 3 hours a week made a 32% chance of fewer errors during incisions than non-gamers as surgeons. So during the study, it was proven that playing video games can help with someone's precision in things like medical incision. So basically, keep playing that Dr. Mario. Just kidding. But aside from normal skills like this and hand-eye coordination, there's also been evidence that video games can also help with shooting accuracy. Something that the Army has seen. Video games have recently been a tool of that, but they have been more called simulations by some parts of the military who utilize them. During a study from Ohio State University, it was shown that a student's gun accuracy had increased after playing around 20 minutes of a first-person shooter. So, because of this study, it was stated that if someone plays video games, their accuracy in firing a weapon could increase. So it's possible that playing something like Call of Duty might improve gun accuracy, but only slightly. But to prove this, a journalist by the name of Andrew Phillips went to a shooting range in Virginia in 1999, a couple years after Doom was released. And after he fired off a couple rounds, the manager there, named Ernie Lyles, told him that newcomers who were the best at their first time around were actually kids. And he assumed that it was because of all the first-person shooter video games that they played, such as Doom and a similar video game called Quake 2. So given that most likely plenty of people go to shooting ranges each day, that statement is reasonable. Especially if they're saying that the kids are better newcomers than the adults who come in. But because of this, it's been said that the military has taken interest into video games. And to be more accurate, the military has decided to incorporate simulations for this, where it was said that in 2011 the military has adapted about 23 video games into their training to help with accuracy and to hone a soldier's reflexes and observation. So, seeing as how the military and army has started to add video games to be part of their training programs, it is proven that video games actually do help with a person's accuracy and reflexes on things. So, to add to helping with someone's everyday skills, such as driving, it's been shown that video games can actually help someone with their gun accuracy, which is why the military has started to take an interest in using these as simulations. In addition to helping improve someone's skills and accuracy, it's also been shown that video games can help overcome some psychological problems and mental issues. Studies have shown that video games can be used to take someone's mind off of their problems, such as needless overeating. In a research from a university, a study showed that there was a 24% reduction in cravings among gamers while they played video games. And according to another study from the University of Pittsburgh in 2012, gaming was employed to help with psychological problems, and once they started playing video games, it was recorded that therapy had actually improved by 69% between the shrink and the patient. So the study shows that video games can also help some therapists with their patients on their psychiatric problems. Whew. During another study from so-called mental health experts, the mental health experts said that video games are usually just simple fun, and in some ways are educational. Coming from mental health experts, it is believed that video games are not doing anything wrong, and they can even help with some problems, and again, be educational. Other than being helpful, however, video games can also be an outlet for people to vent out their anger, or just to get over some stress. For instance, according to a 2009 report from the International Journal of Mental Health and Addiction, 41% of gamers just play video games just to escape reality. So, as shown from the report, it is some ways that people deal with stress. I mean, it's how I deal with stress. I play video games, such as Call of Duty, after a long day. So, aside from these psychological problems, there's also some evidence that video games can, in a way, bring people together, as well as being educational, of course. So, studies have shown that people who play games are able to have a quicker response time, and that can help with reflexes, as mentioned earlier. But in a study where students had to respond to new images on a screen, it was shown that gamers were about 25% faster to respond than non-gamers. And in another study, seniors above the age of 50 who played 10 hours of video games, it was reported that their cognitive functioning had increased for about a few years after playing. So, if cognitive functioning can increase for that, then it must be a good thing. So it's been proven that video games help people both young and old. So even when these studies are performed, however, some people still decide to ignore the benefits of gaming, even if a game such as, well, Minecraft can be used as a tool to teach people about architecture and building, which is what some people use. In fact, I know a local school where a teacher allows people to use Minecraft during their studies because it teaches them about building. So, during a similar kind of study, just last year in 2016, from the University of California in Irvine, brain scans were performed on gamers who played regularly and found out that while the hippocampus in their brain was altered, it was shown that their memory had improved by at least 12%. And given that the study is recent and there was a source to it, I'd say that was proven that memory can improve, as well as motor skills can be improved by playing video games. So in addition to these things like improving the brain, it appears that video games can connect families. So another study from Washington, D.C. also found that 80% of parents who have game systems, they play video games with their kids, and 66% of that group said that playing video games with their family is what brings them together. So, because the parents were interviewed in this study, and that it's a study from Washington, it's kind of safe to say that many times gaming is what helps families connect with each other and brings them together. It is proven that video games can help improve a person's brain and can really help families connect, as well as video games that are labeled MMORPG, which is major multiplayer online role-playing games that are able to help people connect with friends and meet new people all across the world. In conclusion, video games have not been the sole cause for crime or mass shooting, and have proven to actually be beneficial to children's learning, both physically and mentally. Studies have shown that rather than the crime rate going up, the violence rate has actually gone down in the time that video game sales have gone up. It has also been proven that gaming can help people in many ways, whether it's to help with physical skills, or learning, or even psychological problems, and bringing people together. Even when people are addicted to a certain video game, it is not the violent content in the game that makes people want to play. Rather, it is the challenge the video game provides. While some video games are blamed for school shootings and other crimes, such as Doom, there are many other reasons why the incident occurred, such as if the shooter had mental problems, as well as other scapegoats that have been blamed, such as, again, in Columbine, Marilyn Manson was also blamed for the shooting, so video games are not the root cause. But Marilyn Manson isn't either. The kids there were screwed up. So, if people do not see the benefits of playing video games, and they only focus on what they think to be the negative side, then gaming and entertainment in general will no longer be enjoyed by the masses, and it will be unfairly blamed, and it will always be watched by people who are just waiting for a crime or something else bad to happen, and then blame video games. Okay guys, thanks for watching. If you made it all this way this far and didn't skip, then congratulations. This is the longest video I have ever done, and it took a really long time just to finish all of it and edit it.
What happened?
So, thanks for watching guys. Hit like or subscribe if you like this video, and check out my channel for more stuff if you're interested. Except that the videos are nowhere near this long, but they're still pretty good. Anyway, thanks guys. Oh, and also, check out the 7th episode of Bill Nye Saves the World on Netflix. That episode is based around video games, and it kind of does a pretty good job of explaining the video game violence and addiction part.